All right, so what we're going to look at here is we are looking at slope-intercept form. This should be something a lot of you guys are familiar with. This form, it's something you'll be using a lot. So this the big thing we're going to talk about is slope-intercept form. So let's get right into it. So what is slope-intercept form? Slope-intercept form is the equation in the form y equals mx plus b. So again, hopefully that's familiar, y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So we've talked about finding slope, and we've talked about intercepts as well. Intercepts are where the line crosses whatever axis. Well, in particularly, we're looking at the y-intercept. And I mentioned that when we talked about intercepts. I said y-intercept is going to be the important one. And this is why. So this equation right here, y equals 2x plus 6, is in the form y equals mx plus b. This is slope-intercept form because 2 is in the m value. So 2 is your slope. And 6 is in the b value. So 6 is your y-intercept. So to kind of put this into like a visual, kind of put like a picture to it, a y-intercept, this is our y-axis. If it has a y-intercept of 6, that means at the point 0, 6, there's a dot. There's a point there. And slope of 2 means our slope is 2 over 1. So it rises 2, so I'm going to go down 2, and then it goes left 1. Or it can go up 2 and right 1. So meaning this equation creates the line. So the y-intercept is 6, and it has a slope of 2. That's what this equation tells you. And we'll go over more how to graph using this equation. But the biggest thing I want you to see is the number in front of the x is your slope. That is your m. And the number at the end that doesn't have a variable attached to it, that's your y-intercept. So the goal is always to try to get into y equals mx plus b. All right, so that's slope-intercept form. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to write an equation in slope-intercept form. I know it says write and graph, but right now we're going to focus on writing an equation. So write an equation in slope-intercept form, ignore graph. So if we have the slope of 1/4 and a y-intercept of 1, well, we know we're going to be in the y equals mx plus b form. So how I recommend you to do this is m. So identify each one. So my m is my slope. So my m is going to be 1/4. Remember my b represents y-intercept. Well, what's my y-intercept? It's 1. Now I just plug these in the equation y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to write my equation, y equals mx plus b, and I just substitute. So where I see an m, I'm going to put 1/4. So y equals 1/4 x. See, in place of the m, I put 1/4 because that's what it says. Plus, in place of the b, I'm going to put 1, or I'm going to substitute 1 in for b, plus 1. We are done. So I wrote the equation. This is the equation with a slope of 1/4 and a y-intercept of 1. I can pick these right out of here. Boom, just like that. Let's do another one. Again, let's identify our m and our b. So what is m? Well, m represents slope. So what is our slope here? It's -2. And y-intercept is -3. So that means our b is -3. And now we're just going to substitute into our equation. In place of m, we're going to put -2. So y equals -2x, because the x doesn't go away. We're just substituting in the m. And this is the tricky part. So it says plus b. So we could do plus. Well, b is -3 plus -3. Well, that's a lot. That looks clunky. So, okay, per se, clunky. We can rewrite plus and negative as this. -3. So these two equations are the same thing. Both of these equations represent this. This one's cleaner, this one's clunky. They both are correct, but this one looks nicer. So if you have a y-intercept that's negative, you just change your plus to a minus and boom, we're done. So that's writing an equation. So we're given a slope, we're given a y-intercept, we now generate an equation. All right, so we looked at how to generate an equation when given a slope and a y-intercept. Now we're going to do reverse. I'm going to give you an equation, and I want you to be able to state what is the slope and what is the y-intercept. So if we look here, we have y equals 4x plus 7. Well, if we remember, we're in the form y equals mx plus b. M is our slope, b is our y-intercept. So if we look here, m is next to the x, so m is our slope, so our slope, or our m, slope, is m. But what would it be on this equation? It would be the 4 because it's with the x. And what is our y-intercept, or our b? Well, that's the number that's not attached to the x, so our y-intercept would be 7 here. Okay. Let's look at another one. Y equals 1/4 x minus 3. Our slope, which again is m, well, what would it be here? Well, this is attached to the x, so our slope would be 1/4. What would be our y-intercept? Well, our b value. Well, what would it be here? We know it's 3, but is it going to be positive or negative? Remember, because this is a minus, because normally it would be plus, because this is a minus, our slope would be -3. And let's do one more. So what would be the slope here? Well, if we look, this number is attached to the x. It would be -2, because there's a minus sign with there. And what is our y-intercept, or our b? Well, it would just be 8. Pretty simple stuff. M, slope, is attached to the x. Y-intercept is the constant by itself. I'm going to throw a little tricky one at you right here. What if I did this? Y equals 4/3 x. And we needed to find our slope, or our m, and we needed to find our y-intercept, or our b. Well, remember, slope is attached to the x, so our slope would be 4/3. Well, what is our b? What is our y-intercept? There's nothing listed. There's nothing added on. Well, what number can we add to anything and not change it? Oh yeah, 0. So here, if you see nothing added on, if we just see a y equals mx, our b is 0 in this case. All right, so we learned how to write an equation in slope-intercept form, given slope and y-intercept. We learned how to take an equation, identify our slope and y-intercept. And I'm going to throw one more tricky thing at you here, if I can turn my page. And that's a lot of similar things. We're not going to graph yet. We're just going to state our slope and y-intercept. Well, this isn't in the y equals mx plus b form. Remember, we want it in y equals mx plus b. This is where our literal equations come into play. Okay, we learned about literal equations. So what we need to do is we need to solve this equation to get y all by itself. So first move, we want to get this y by itself. We're going to subtract 5x. Subtract 5x. So we have 4y equals, I'm going to put the -5x first. And you'll see why here in a second. And then plus 8, because that's 8 is a positive. Again, y is not by itself yet. There's still a 4 attached to it. So we're going to divide by 4. And then we're going to divide by 4. And here we're going to divide every piece by 4. And this is where I told you guys, sometimes dividing each piece makes it look clean. It helps with identifying. This is where it comes into play. So we're left with y equals -5/4 x plus, well, what's 8 divided by 4? 8 divided by 4 is 2. Boom. We turn this into our y equals mx plus b equation. Now we need to identify our slope and our y-intercept. Well, our slope, or our m, is -5/4. And our y-intercept, or our b, is a +2. So sometimes it's not nice and neat and given to you in the form, slope-intercept form. Sometimes it's in a different form. Hopefully you recognize this is standard form. And we got to get it into slope-intercept form. That's where literal equations come into play. Again, it's all building on itself. Let's do another one. I know there's 2 down here, but we'll just do one more. All right. Let's do this one on the right. So we want to get y by itself. So we're going to add 2x. See, because it's a -2. So to turn this into 0, we have to add 2x. 5y equals, again, I'm going to put the 2x first. It helps me keep it in the y equals mx plus b form. 2x plus 10. Again, y is not by itself, so we divide by 5. And I'm going to divide each part by 5 so that we get a clean look. Y equals 2/5 x plus 10 divided by 5 is 2. We're not done yet. What? We just solved. Well, I want to know my slope and my y-intercept. So here, my slope, or my b, is 2/5. Slide that up. Oh, I mean, sorry, my m, slope, sorry. Sorry, guys. My m is 2/5. Hopefully you guys are going, Mr. Harris, that's wrong. Okay, good, I fixed it. And then my y-intercept, or my b, is 2. So again, my slope, my m is 2/5. My y-intercept, or my b, is 2. Sorry about that little mess up. I was actually looking at the equation and staring at the b when I was reading slope. So hopefully this helped out. You're going to be able to, you now should be able to create an equation in the form y equals mx plus b, given slope, given y-intercept. You should be able to identify your slope and your y-intercept given an equation. And then you should be able to be given an equation, put it into slope-intercept form, and then identify it all. So many things, I know. Remember, if you are stuck, you have questions, reach out to me. We can do a Zoom or Google Hangout.